we are into a big technology day. We're starting easy with pinball ownership for everyone. And then the next session will be my talk on add-a-ball games. There's a lot of good examples of add-a-ball games, and I'll put a lot of context around that in my presentation. Then we have some technical Q&A, and then we're going to jump right from Pinball Ownership 101, which we're doing right now. In 3 hours, we'll be into, I want to build my own machine of my own design. So we're going really fast on the technology track today. Tonight we have John Yavsey and also the LTG show. So that'll be after the supper break. Tomorrow we have some professional pinball designers, and you'll be hearing a lot about the factory type of working on pinball, developing a game in a factory context tomorrow. But today it's what we do as hobbyists, going all the way up to building games of our own design. And so now, a guy that I've known for a long time. He was a big supporter of the old New England Pin Fest that we used to do. Some of you may remember that back in the early 90s. And I finally have him making his first ever talk about pinball. So let's welcome Dave Metrando from Highland, New York.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. I've been in the hobby since 1991. Been doing this kind of on and off in the beginning, and then really dove into it probably in the late 90s. I've owned over 260 machines. I probably have about 85 now, along with some various other games, and I'm going to just kind of go through and just show you where I come from. And this is a few pictures of the game room. You can see this is kind of the storage, and this is where you get, by the way, after a while. And we'll get to this in a minute. But I'm not going to pretend that I have the technical knowledge that some of the other folks, and the design knowledge, and some of the other things that you're going to hear. You're going to hear folks today and tomorrow, who have been in this and doing this forever, and they part of designing games, and that's not me. And if you want to know about the history of the games and the history of the builds and all that, you're not going to find that from me. What you're going to find from me today and get from me is the grassroots kind of, this is what happens when I walk into somebody's basement stuff, all right? And from there, we're going to try to get you from the idea of, yeah, maybe I want to have a pinball machine, to actually getting that machine set up in your basement, right? Or your rec room, or your kitchen, depending on who you are. So, and that's where I come in. I, again, had very limited space for a number of years. I had 3 games in the second bedroom. It was a 9x11 room. I had 3 pinball machines amongst the desk and a lot of other things in there. And it was tight. Finally, we built our house in 1994, and but it took a few years before we got the game room going, and we got that done around 99. So you saw some of the game room. Then in 2004, I felt the need to expand the game room. Figured half the basement, I was going to have 8 games, maybe a video game, maybe an arcade game, Shuffle Alley. I bought this kiddie helicopter ride back on the day of my wife's grandmother's funeral at an auction, and then went to the funeral. That game sat in my mother-in-law's garage from 94 through, or 92 through about 2000, and now it sits in my garage in the same spot in the corner since then. So the best laid plans of mice and men with this kind of thing, and it ended up being where it ended up all pinball. When you get to, and we're going to talk about how you get to that point and making your decisions on that. Especially in the beginning, I'd buy anything I could get my hands on. You'd walk into somebody's house and it was a disaster. And walk home with the machine, you go home with the game. You would, before the internet, I would be looking, well, I would drive my wife crazy. I'd go to Barnes & Noble every Thursday or Friday. There's a newspaper called Antiques and the Arts Weekly, for those of you who know anything about that. And it's about the size, the thickness, it looks like the Sunday New York Post, that's how thick it is. The second half of that paper is all the antique auctions in the Northeast for the next couple of weeks. And I would go through every one of those auctions, line by line by line, picture by picture, to see if there were pinball machines there. And I found quite a few that way. There was a guy that we used to hang out with, used to call me the silent assassin. I would show up in games that nobody even knew was for sale. You know, so it was a lot of hard work. The internet's made this a lot easier. But the problem is the internet has also allowed all of you and everybody else to find it too. So, you know, we're going to talk about what happens when that happens. So my collection grew and grew to the point where I had over 260 games in and out, and I have about 85 now, amongst other things, the soda machines and other things. On your way in, you got a copy of, if you wanted it, The Absolute Beginner's Guide to Pinball Ownership. They're right there. I spoke with Kerry Hemming, a really nice guy from Rochester, Minnesota. Gave me permission to copy this and give this to you. He said the prices might be a little off on this. And in fact, if you buy a game in Boston, Spa, New York, the prices are definitely off from this. But this will certainly run you through the kind of the things you need to know as you walk into somebody's house, finding a way around a game and what to do with it when you first get it, and shipping a game. And we're going to get into what you want to do about getting your game home. Repair and maintenance, and we're going to get into a little bit of repair 101, not a whole lot. We're not going to get too deep, but I want to show you just basically how to read a schematic. And then parts and where to get help. And that's where we all come in too. Because the networking in the hobby is probably as important as reading one of these guides in terms of being able to do repairs and maintenance and those kinds of things. So this is a takeaway. You can take this with you. And what I want to get into, though, most of what I want to talk to is what really happens when you get out there looking for games. And there's some real stuff. And here's what I learned. I'm going to see if I can get through some of this. See, this is more of kind of this is the inside part. This is the workshop that we added on in 2006 because I ran out of room again. And this is the garage, and on both sides of the garage, both sides of the garage, there's just games all lined up.
28 now.
Get rid of that car.
Yeah, get rid of the car. Okay, here's kind of what I've learned. It's a sickness. I equate it to eating Lay's potato chips, and those of you who remember that, you can't just eat one. You start getting them, and they multiply. You wake up the next morning, there's 3 more games there. And that's what happens. You know you have the sickness, especially when you just buy everything in sight. You buy everything. You see a game down the road, you just buy it. You don't even, you walk in, yeah, I want to buy it. I just want to buy it. And it's roached out. It's what it is. You know, when you come home and your wife smacks you in the head for offering your newborn for a wood rail. I mean, no, it's you know, you're putting things, you're leaving work early when you're not supposed to because you got to go look at the game. Have we done this? I mean, you know, so it'll take you kind of to do this to kind of figure out what, coming to shows, kind of figuring out what you like, what you think you want in your collection, kind of understanding what's rare, and a note about rare. We talk about this on occasion amongst ourselves. Rare doesn't exactly equal collectible or valuable. Okay, it's especially valuable because people automatically equate rare with valuable. If I had a game called Bally 4, I wouldn't call that collectible because it's just no to me. Now, some people may. I think they made 70 of them. You guys know?
I have one.
Okay, sorry. But no, so what happened was that a lot of, I don't know if Bally did this, I know Golly did this particularly after, when the wedge head era began. They would put sample games out on site. And it would be, you'd see a little S next to the serial number. And the results of how well those games did when they were on site would probably help determine the production numbers. And if they didn't do well, they didn't produce a hell of a lot of it. There were other things that determined production in pinball as well, but that was one of the things that would help them determine what they were going to make. And if it didn't do well, they didn't make a lot, and they just moved on to the next game.
Doing well is coin box.
Doing well is coin.
There's no survey or anything.
Yeah. No. There
So
wouldn't be. By the way, there's no survey at the end of this, and there's no test when we're done here today. Just I lost my place. Here we go.
Rare is not fun.
No, I know that. So, unless you're a hoarder, you'll learn these things, and you'll you can be picky after a while. When you get to the numbers of games that I know some of the people in this room have, you can start to be picky, and now you can go in and say, I don't want this. I don't want to buy this game. But here's the thing. There's a couple of things, and in this hobby, the more time you spend in it, you grab a little, kind of names attached to you. You get a little reputation, if you will. You don't want to get the reputation of being a tire kicker, right? There's a guy that lives up not too far from me, came to my house to look at a ski club, Annabelle Alpine Club. He and his brother spent 3 hours in my workshop looking at this game. He goes, well, I really didn't think I wanted to buy it anyway. So, okay, you just wasted 3 hours of my time. So the point is you don't want to waste your time and somebody else's time too. All right. There's going to be people out there that are going to ask you for your firstborn's left arm for a game, and there's just some games it's just not worth the money. And you have to be. You don't want to spend money on games, and the game is sitting there, and you're looking at this thing, you're going, it's killing me because I know I overpaid. And there's times when you have to pay more than you think you should, and most of the time you shouldn't have to. Guys will ask astronomically tons of money for games and not get. You'll see games, and you see it today. Everybody can look on eBay and see these games that are on over and over and over again because they start at $3,700, and it's a $1,200 game. And you'll see it over and over and over again, and they'll just sit there. Well, if I'm buying games to flip, I don't have the extra capital to sit in these games that aren't going to do anything. So you can't go spending the money and overpaying like that. How far are you going to drive to pick up? You'll go to the ends of the earth. I drove to Roanoke, Virginia to make a trade because I wanted a bowling queen. I drove all the way to Roanoke, and it's in my collection today. But I don't know that I would do that today. But I did that in the beginning.
You're getting better.
Yeah, that's that.
You're getting better.
Yeah, I'm learning. There are a lot of games out there, guys. A lot of games, and if you can check through the auction listings, and there are auctions all over the Northeast with lots of games, and usually an antique auction you can get a pretty good deal on them unless if I walk in there and want to do this, or Chad's there or something. So you will go, like I said, to the ends of and you will go through the depths of hell to get it out of wherever it is. And I mean, you would go crazy once you're there and you've decided to buy the game. You won't leave. You can't leave it out. I took my wife once to a place in Ellenville, New York. It was a taxidermy shop. And we drove up to this place, and it's probably as hot as it was yesterday. And there's this guy outside with just a pair of shorts on, a pair of work boots, He's fixing the brakes on some Mustang or something, and I'm here to look at the game. Oh yeah, come on. And he's covered with grease. We walked through the taxidermy shop, you know, all the stuff, the animals or whatever. Back through the shop where they do it. The trail of blood on the floor. It's disgusting. Stunk. Onto the back porch, and you go on the back porch. You already remember the old Bugs Bunny cartoons where they were in the desert? You'd see the white skulls and skeletons and stuff. And that's what the backyard of this place looked like. My wife was with me. And there are people in those suits, and she's pretty outspoken. And she looked at the guy and she said, "What the hell is this?" So, and the game was sitting there. It was a Bobby Orr power play. And I knew it was cheap, $25. It was maggot infested. The guy says, "I'll give it to you." I said, "You can't pay me to take this game." And I thanked him for his time, and we left. And we got in the car, and "Honey, where are we going for dinner?" You know? So, and she goes, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Well, let's go to my father's house." She goes, "Why?" I said, "Because you have to smack my father for bringing me up to bring you to a bar. I would never." You know. So, you know, you'll go crazy. And, you know, I've heard Joe having to take games out of brownstones or something. You know, I pulled a game out of a basement in Albany, New York a couple of months ago, and I couldn't get it up the stairway, so I had to actually take apart his Bilko door to get the game out. So yeah, I haven't learned yet either. So,
Dave,
yes.
a quick note of my own experience. That line that says, "And you'll go to the depths of hell to get a game out from wherever it is." Greenwich, Connecticut, maybe about 12, 15 years ago. Guy has a ball bowler and a Williams blue chip pinball. He'd like to move him out of there. What he didn't tell me when I arrived at this very nice estate, by the way, this large basement had undergone renovation. The garage door entrance was now sealed by a wall, and the only access was by a spiral staircase. The only way
We
to get
know
out
where
of
that's
there.
going. So.
And I neglected to ask him those questions before I drove about 75 miles to get to him.
So that's what happens.
Nice
Yeah.
little story. I'd like to add my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is.
So, the depths of hell, right there. So you realize you get to the point where you can be picky, and there are games everywhere. Most antique dealers and auctioneers have no clue about pinball. They know nothing. They might know a little bit about some rare, you know, some collectible jukeboxes, and then maybe a soda machine or two. They know nothing. There's very few and far between. They know anything about pinball. So, especially like the antique, you know, auctioneers, the audience in the auction is going to determine the selling price. But when you go to an antique store, for no sense in arguing with it. Give the guy, he wants, $500 for a game that you think is worth $200, and he's not going to move. Give him your business card, ask him if you can give him a call once in a while. The game's not going anywhere. Eventually, unless you offer him $2 and Joe Roth walks in a week later and offers him $2.25 and he takes it, you're going to lose. You know, but most of the time you're going to call him, every couple of months or a few months later. Finally, he's going to say, "I need the space," and you're going to get the game for what you think it's worth. You know, unless of course he overpaid. And even then, if he needs the space that bad, he'll start to cut a little off of that. So most antique dealers are, even pickers. Remember the early picker? People who watch pickers here, you walked up to that Jungle King, so a coil for this thing's about $100. You don't want to get involved in these, and then they realize that, there's a few dollars in pinball. I can extract a pinball from a barn fairly cheaply and make a couple of bucks. So even they weren't. This is the bottom line, I should have made this really big, is that this is supposed to be fun. And we get collecting things, we forget that sometimes, don't we? We don't want to forget that. I don't do this as some people do it as a business. Some people, we have a famous flea market vendor here, and some people do it to make a couple of dollars, but it's supposed to be fun, right? And that's why I do this. So when you run into Frankfurter online, All right? When the guy who told you that you're going to get first dibs on the game sells it to somebody else, don't get pissed off. Just forget it. Move on. When the guy across town gets the game that's 2 doors down from you and you don't get it, or when the guy from out of town comes and gets it, all right? When the guy from out of town comes and gets it, or worse, you know, when there's a kid out there on the show floor beating the crap out of your valuable game, just calmly walk up to him and ask him to treat it with more respect. Just, you know, this is supposed to be fun. There's no sense in getting yourself all worked up over something that's supposed to be fun. And people do that. We've all done it and kind of learned over the years. This is a hobby, and oh yeah, there was a flea market vendor at a show back at the old Merchant Square. Promised me a game. Promised me, yeah, you get first dibs on this, sweethearts. And I'll be at my trailer at 7:30. And I'm at his trailer at 7:30, and he opens the door and he sold it to somebody else. And I was paused. And my wife had to grab me by the shoulder and say, hey, look, don't forget this is fun. And I walked up to him and I stuck my hand out and I apologized to him because I let into him pretty good. And he stuck his hand out and he apologized to me too. We didn't need to, but he did. And we're pretty darn good friends now. So when you run into Pete, well, you know, just make sure he's one of the good guys. So the takeaways, and see where we are here. Oh yeah. I put this on to add some credibility here. That's Steve Young fixing one of my games at my house. For those people who don't know.
He doesn't have a phone in his ear.
No, he doesn't have a phone in his ear. So the takeaways. First thing is, don't fix the game at the seller's location. Okay? If you do, you know, I almost made this mistake last weekend actually when I was looking at a game, and I got the game kind of to work a little bit. You're at the auction hall and they're getting ready to auction the game up. The game doesn't work, and you fix it. Or you somehow get it to work. You know, don't do it. Also, the price is going to go up, or somebody else is going to get the fruits of your labor. If you just, you know, even you're playing with relays and somehow get it to work. All right? Don't do that. All right? Don't leave without at least some part of the game. All right? You're at work. You're on your break and you read the paper, and 2 blocks from work, a guy selling a lucky hand. You go over there, you go to the bank, run over there at lunchtime, go look at the game. Yeah, I gotta have it. Pay the guy the money for it. Say, well, you brought the Cadillac to work that day. And you can't drag a lucky hand home in the back of your new ATS. So I'll be back tonight with my truck and I'll get the game. Show up, pull in his driveway. Guy walks out the door, hands you your money back. Says, hey, some guy came over and gave me $300 more than I was asking for the game. I had to sell it to him.
So what do you grab there? Keys?
So what's that?
Keys?
Yeah. So
Light bulbs.
even if you have one of these, or one of these, to you go, by the way. Even if you have one of these, you could fit the head in there. You could fit the head in one of these. I'm telling you. Take something. All right? Because he can't sell the game to somebody else if the head's on. All right? If you pay the guy, you got to take something. All right? That brings me to the last takeaway that I didn't put up there, is you got to have a vehicle that will haul games. You cannot depend on somebody else to do it for you. You know, God helps those who help themselves, you know, kind of thing. You have to make sure you can haul the game yourself. It's part and parcel to the hobby. It should, you know, or something that'll tow a trailer or something like that. You cannot have this as your only vehicle and think you're going to collect these games. Because eventually your friends are gonna get tired of you, you know, they're gonna change their phone number, they're gonna move out of town, they're gonna do something to get, anything to get away from you. So you gotta be able to move your own games.
Dave?
Yeah.
Dave, I actually have a question. Exactly how do you move a game by yourself? I mean, I moved 4 of them. I've always had 2 or 3 other people doing it. So there's got to be a better way. Obviously, I don't know how to move them by
Well,
myself.
it depends on what you're moving. And I'm not an expert on moving solid state games where the head folds down and
That's
those
what I
things.
have. Is that
Yeah, you see now, those things, and George probably can help you with that more than I can, or somebody that does that, but,
Cart? Yeah, cart.
I do. Yeah, hand truck.
a hand truck and a cart, and,
walking
you know, and if you have to get downstairs and stuff like that, it's still hard.
And that's the problem. Like stairs, I can't
Yeah.
lift it by myself.
Yeah.
There should be
Stairs
backwards
need to be-
people.
So,
Hand truck.
$3,000 dolly.
or an escalator, or what do you say that word? Is it, with the stair dolly? But for EMs, I mean, for most EMs, it's pretty easy. You know, some of those 4-player Gottlieb heads from the late '70s are pretty heavy. You know, for the most part, I mean, I don't know that unless there's some difficult situations where it's in a really hard place with a spiral staircase or something like that. For the most part, EMs you can do by yourself. By taking the legs up, taking the head off, and moving. And even when it gets to the point where you have a really narrow, steep staircase with an EM, you could even take the play field out to make everything lighter and just move smaller, lighter pieces of the stair. And I've had to do that on a number of occasions, believe me. So you need. Another thing and the last thing is, and this kind of helps you keep the price kind of low. I go into Joe Neighbor's house there and buy a game, and I bring my wife with me a lot of times. Now, people say a lot. My wife is very outspoken, as you know, but she's also an animal lover. And most people, I don't know what the percentage of Americans have pets, but it's quite high. And you start playing with their dog, and all of a sudden you found a way into their heart kind of thing. And it's kind of breaking the ice, if you will. And all of a sudden, you know, and you earn credibility in the seller's mind by being an animal lover, or to be, you know, to kind of find some other common ground with them, and it's really easier when you have your wife with you. Believe me. So, but, you know, and it's not.
Doesn't that cut down on your price you want to offer for the game?
Yeah. So the next thing is you need to have a dry and reasonably clean place to store a game. You know, if you put it in a shed outside, you put the back glass in a shed outside, it's gonna, you know, and it goes down to 0, you know, and somebody sealed it at one point, it's gonna flake off, it's gonna peel off. So you have to, you know, something dry, reasonably temperature controlled. You saw the bodies of all my games in the garage. That garage is not temperature controlled, but when it's like one of those winter days when there's this haze and you can see it hanging over, you know, unless I open the garage doors, then you'll see all the condensation on all the games. But if I keep the garage closed up, those games won't get that. Now I don't keep the heads in there. The heads are in the back of the shop. You saw that picture. And that's all temperature controlled. That's heated and air conditioned. Okay, the heads you really kind of have to do that with. Yes.
Have you tried the light bulb technique, where you throw like just a single 100-watt bulb to take the edge off?
No, I've never done that.
Okay.
I've never done that. Now,
I read about it, but I've never actually tried it myself.
now people with electronic games, you know, I know when you, all right, confession time. I bought a video game once. Some guy, day it was snowing, there was a snowstorm. I went up to somewhere north of Albany, and I came home, and I wheeled it in the house, and I was just smart enough to think, well, you know what? This thing's been out in the ice cold all day, and I bring it in this house. I probably shouldn't plug it in right away. You know what I mean? So, and I let it sit overnight till temperatures could even out before I plugged it in. I think with this particular solid state games, you'd want to do that. So be nice to people. You know, I do that for a living. I work, I'm the director of food service at a hospital. And, you know, people know about food more than anything else. Kind of thing. And so when they complain, I get to go to their room. And my job is to win them over. Okay? And if you win them over, you know, I think 1 out of 100 will still hate me by the time I leave. You know? So just by being nice to people. Be fair with people. Okay? Did I make this a little similar to put this on there? Oh, that's the tools. Okay, we're gonna get to that in a minute. I'll leave you go, okay? Be fair with people. You know, I went once in Red Hook, New York to look at a game, and 2 other pinball guys had been there before me. It's $250 for this game. Nice game. It was a Valley Pioneer, I think. Nice game. And somebody had cut some wires in the motor board. And they're trying to get him down $25, and he wouldn't get down. I walked in there, looked at the game. There are a couple of cut wires on the motor board. I could fix that. The rest of the cosmetics were, those cosmetics are what you can't replace. They had a broken plastic. There was a plastic set for that game. So you do a little research on the game before you go. And I just paid the money, started taking it apart. The game was worth it. I know one of the guys up there. I called him. I said, I can't believe you passed in this game. So yeah, so be fair. Just be fair. If the game is worth the money, pay for the game.
The previous guys sabotaged the game to get him down?
No. When he looked at it, he saw a couple of cut wires off of the relay. And the funny thing is whoever did it actually didn't cut them. They unsoldered them, which made it even easier.
Yeah, it
So-
sounded
No,
like
I didn't mean to
yeah.
imply that. No, he didn't do that.
Okay.
I didn't mean to imply that. And if the seller wants more money than you're willing to pay for the game, just pass on it. There's more games out there. Just pass on it. And I did that, and George got it. You know,
I'll teach you.
yeah. But just pass and leave him your card. And just 1 second. Leave him your card. And just ask him if it's okay to give him a call once in a while. I'm working on this deal right now where I've looked at the game for a year now. I have the game. But the game that this person has a much better play field than mine.
Where is it?
The rest of the game, the back glass is hammered, the cabinet's painted, it doesn't have any other remarkable, you know, like the irreplaceable parts are missing. There's no, it's a wood rail, there's no Heath coin chutes, there's no, you know what I mean? But I need that play field. And the lady wants money for the game as if it's a fully restored game. You gotta pass. And I left her husband showed me the game, I left her my card, and I asked about, and I call her about every other month. Eventually I'm gonna get, because nobody else is gonna buy this game. Because there's nobody, you can't get it working, it's missing a lot of stuff. It looks terrible. Nobody's gonna buy it, so it's gonna sit there. And I told her, she's in a storage unit, I'll be right there. And it's in a storage unit, and she's paying storage. So eventually she's gonna figure it out. First
What did you think about a hack game? Do you ignore the hacks and try to figure it out later, or do you try to
If
figure
I
it
can-
out on site what happened and why, or?
if I look at the thing and I can fix the hack, I ignore it.
Okay.
I ignore it. I'm gonna get to a part here about hack, because a lot of times hack games, it's because people tried to make them play for free and they didn't know how to do it. That's what I found. Yes, Frank.
I was just going to ask you, with that game you were looking at, did you tell the woman of your intentions, why you wanted that game, because of Playfield?
No, and the reason is because she was trying to sell it, and she had a lot of sentimental value, and she would want to see it restored back to its original glory in its current form versus me taking it and using the parts off of it.
So you got that feeling from her.
If I need to get to the point where I have to do that, I will. But, you know, she's a very nice lady, and she works in a business that's kind of closely related to what I do, so kind of have another in to speak with her, so, you
Can
know.
I have a couple more hints, Dave?
Yes, no. Pinball is not am sure that somewhere, I mean, car guys get divorced all the time over, you know what I mean? And you know, it's funny because a lot of pinball guys are either in a previous life were car guys, or vice versa, or at the same time. It's just weird how that works, yeah. But yeah, it's and I like to say, and I don't know why my wife didn't come in and find out. It's just pinball, and nobody loves this hobby more than I do, maybe except for the Roth brothers. But nobody loves this hobby more than I do. But it's just pinball, and it's supposed to be fun. Okay, questions about that part of?
So I take it, is it better to buy a version game from someone's house or one from another collector? I mean, or if you like the game, you want it.
Well, you know,
one that's been not restored.
You know, you're going to get the best deal pulling it out of somebody's basement probably versus buying it from me or from, especially from George.
I like how you do yours. I don't like
So, but you know, a lot of times you're looking for a game, and if you find it, it might be the only one you're ever going to see. You don't know that a lot of times. You know, so you got to feel for the game. You know what I mean?
Whether it's gone through or not, you'll make it your own.
Yeah, I'll make it my. Well, it doesn't matter if somebody goes through a game, and I love everybody here, but if they shop a game, I'm going to do it again anyway.
Right.
So I don't worry about that.
Okay.
I don't worry about that. Anything else? All right, we're going to do a little collecting or repair 101. I handed out a list of kind of things to go through on a Gottlieb game.
Can I ask you a real quick question?
Yes.
I'm looking at the pictures. Out of your 85 games, how many do you have set up at any given time?
Right now, what do I have? 35. I probably have 50 in waiting. And
So the ones that are not set up are ready to be restored. You don't have any working games that are just switched out.
no, I don't have that. Some people do have that. I don't have that.
They're in line.
I have room at some point if the part of the workshop gets turned into game room for about 60 games total to be set up. And you know, and you'll do this too. Those of you, I'll wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning for an idea, and I'll run downstairs in my underwear to try to measure stuff. I've done that,
Right.
and you know, come on, you've done it. Chad's done it. I know.
I changed my master bedroom around.
You
Put
see?
more games in there.
I've had dreams where I have other rooms in my house that I can use, and I wake up, oh no.
Remember the king bed, right? The little one.
So the outline for repair. Now, this is just the person who wrote it. That's his kind of take on it. The products in there are interchangeable. You know, Formula 409 is interchangeable with some things. You know, with Pintastic or some other cleaners and that kind of thing. Now look, what I'm going to talk about when it comes to this is how I do this. When you talk about cleaners and that kind of thing, we can have, you know, a debate, you know, that will cause people to do, God forbid, what happened in Dallas the other day, and my heart goes out to the families of those people, by the way. For those of you who haven't heard, there was a really bad shooting where it was sniper shot 12 cops, 5 died. So, you know, Godspeed to those people. But the debate about cleaners can bring out people's ire in that regard. So we don't want that to happen here. These are just the cleaners that I use. But the first thing I do when you talk about repair is to make sure you have the right tools. Okay? Doesn't matter whether you're fixing a car, a washing machine, a pinball machine, or your toaster.
Was that the toolkit for the Yugo?
Yeah, that's a toolkit. That's a toolkit from the Yugo. All right. On the top, just so you know, I use those for changing drop targets. You cannot change drop targets without tools like that. Somewhere in here, I don't know what I did with it. I have my little circuit breaker. But this is a really cool tool because a lot of times there's short circuits in games, and you'll blow a box load of fuses trying to figure out where a short circuit is. This will really help. And this is just, you can digikey, that's where I got it, 15 amp circuit breaker, attach a 15 amp fuse to it, and you stick it in the fuse holder. Usually the place that gets hot somewhere is where the short is. But this really helps. You know, these, you know, Flexstone, somewhere on one of these things it says use sandpaper. So I don't recommend using sandpaper, okay? Sandpaper, you know, the grit falls off of it. I don't recommend. This is a Flexstone file with the word stone in there. There's a reason for that.
That's for cleaning contacts?
Cleaning contacts. And then same thing with the files. This is a file. It's a metal file. I use metal files for most contacts anyway.
Not the bold one, right? Not the bold contact.
Yeah, I don't. Well, I'm not a solid state guy. So.
You were talking mostly EM stuff?
Yeah, we're talking essentially EMs here. It's a file burnish or a contact burnisher. This is everybody knows it's a bulb remover. Alright. And of course, there's other versions of these. Look on the Pinball Resource website, there's a tool section for pinball tools. Okay, ball light bulb cleaner. And this is 1/4 inch wrench. And you can never find this when you need it. So I have a little box that I keep my pinball tools in, and that always stays in there. It's a snap-on.
There you go, good.
So that's a 1/4, and that goes on. You know, I mean, it's just you always need that, especially when you're putting your play field back together and you're putting the piece on the T-nut on the plastic goes on top. You need to hold it sometimes when you put the top nut on. Because otherwise you'll tighten it too tight and strip it. So,
Excuse me, what's the name of the tool in the top that you use for the drop targets?
I don't know the name of that.
Just dental.
Like a dental thing, maybe slightly
Mine
modified.
is a spring puller.
Spring hook.
Yeah.
Spring puller.
Spring hook, and there's two of them up there. One, see the second one is a little longer than the first one. Because sometimes when you get in there, it's like you're in the operating room. Because it's so tight.
And a burnisher, is that's like using a business card or something? That's like no file at all, just kind of rubbing the dirt off?
Okay.
Cool.
Yes.
One question on the file.
That's fine.
You know, I've got those files, I've been doing this long too, and I never know, and I've looked and looked and looked, when I should be using, I've stuck with business cards and I never touch the file because I'm nervous about destroying the contact. So,
If
my
there's,
question is there like a rule of thumb, the Flexstone is like on the flipper end of stroke switch, I think? And it means you have any, like, words of wisdom?
I use metal file. I use a metal file like a nail. My wife somehow she had an old manicure kit and had a nice metal file. And the thing is, it won't wear out. And I use that on him. Yeah, and I'm telling you these. And Steve Young will tell you. And by the way, a lot of people in the tri-state area in New York who learned anything about pinball learned it from him. He really has taught a lot of people a lot about pinball, and he's taught me a lot about pinball. And I haven't even begun to scratch the surface. This guy knows a lot about a lot.
And again, Dave, you wanna emphasize that's on EM.
This is on EM games, yes. Thank you very much for bringing that up. This is on EM games. I don't want anybody to say that I recommended you use this on your gold contact, yeah. But on an EM, you can wear that contact down till there's almost nothing and it'll still work. As long as it's not loose. And that's the other thing that happens with these things, because they'll go through that blade and they'll get loose and they're not gonna make contact sometimes. So I always say, if I have any question about that, you take a stub nose plier and squeeze it real tight so it's nice. Alright, but you can wear, a lot of times these contacts, particularly on EM games and specifically Williams games for some reason, they'll get pitted. And you gotta file that pit off of there. Alright, you gotta file that down and file that pit off of there. It's kinda like a cavity in your mouth. You gotta get it all out. Alright, because it'll come back and it'll get bigger and bigger and you're not gonna get good contact. Thank you. So make sure you have decent household tools like, I don't know the name, I call it a Holdy screwdriver. And I was gonna bring one with me and I didn't. A Holdy screwdriver, that holds the screw.
Screwdriver, yeah.
Yeah, and they even make one for Phillips head screws. It's got a little like grabber on the end of it. And they don't make the old kind for flathead screws, the kind that when you pull the centerpiece down, it makes the end fatter. That's the best kind to use. Is there a special name? Mike's an engineer. Is there a name for that?
Split blade.
Yeah.
Split blade?
Yeah. See, a really good set of Allen wrenches. Don't go to Harbor Freight and buy your Allen wrenches. All right, I go to Harbor Freight all the time. I live in the place, but there's certain tools I won't buy there. Don't go to Harbor because they'll wear out the first time you use them. Go to Sears and buy good Craftsman Allen wrenches because I'm telling you, you'll be taking a coin door apart and you'll strip that little nut, that little screw, and you'll never get it out. You'll have to, and that thing is, I think that screw is made of some kind of hardened steel or something like that. You can't get it. Those things are a pain in the neck if you strip them. So don't do that. So you get a good set of Allen wrenches. Do not, and you need a really good soldering gun. Again, don't buy this at Harbor Freight. All right, go get a good Weller soldering gun. Okay, because you're going to use it a lot. Okay, it's just part of the deal. How are we doing on time? There's a lot of repair guides out there. These are out of print, I think, aren't they?
The Bear Cameron one is definitely in print.
Okay.
I talked to him a few months ago, he's still doing it.
Okay, and this is Russ Jensen's runs. Russ has since left us.
Doyle has been reprinting those, there may be some still around.
Okay, these are really good. Okay. We're going to talk about schematics in a minute. Buy the manual for the game. Now, some animals didn't have the manual. They didn't have a manual. But I'm going to tell you now, if I lived by this, I could have saved myself hours. When you adjust a roto unit, this is a catalog from 1968. When you adjust a roto unit, there's a specific order, because there's probably, there's 5 or 6 adjustments on this? There's a specific order in which you do them in. And if you do them in that order, you'll get it right. If you do them in the order in which you think you should do them, it ain't happening. I'm telling you, I've done it. I can't tell you the hours that if I followed this rule would have saved me. So get the manual for the game. So like I said, some animals don't have the manual, but it might even be worth it because they're $4. Most of these are $4. Resource for EM game. And some of the same units, for example, if you have a Playmates, you can use the Domino manual to, for the adjustments, or you buy one of these deals that kind of covers a variety of games. Steve has these in reprints, so these are worth getting. And also, they'll have all the part numbers, so when you call Steve Young, he doesn't yell at you. All right? So restoring these old games isn't as difficult as it looks. It's cleaning. There's a lot of cleaning involved. Okay. And we talked about the tools. There's also Clay's Repair Guide. I don't know if that's still online or in the archives.
Still might be behind the paywall.
Yeah, but that's really good. Here's just quick. We talk about hacks. And people, this is some guy I had just picked up at the ship Ahoy, and this is the coin unit over here, and where the coin switch would hit. We ran a wire over here, and this is a key electric switch where the coin lock is supposed to be, and that's how they got the game to play for free. I cut all this stuff out. If I see a wire that I don't think belongs there, I just cut it out.
Now they keep the door shut.
They just kind of sat there.
You play the game with the door open all the time.
So, yeah, and that's dangerous, by the way, playing the game with the door open. So I usually cut all that stuff out. There's ways to get the game to play for free. Some of it's described in some of these.
You're reminding me of something about coin doors. Know your era. Look at a schematic. Their older games are much more likely to have 110 volts on the coin door. Usually there's a warning, or there was when it left the factory 65 years ago, and the warning fell off, but it's still 110 volts on the coin door.
And we're gonna go over that in a minute about grounding games, so, but first, this is a list of the cleaners. Now, this is what I use. I'm not telling you that you should all use them. You use what works best for you. The couple of them I wanted to talk about really quickly, and I put this in because I use wood glue all the time, but because cabinets get split. This is lanolin hand cleaner. Score reels. Most anything else but lanolin hand cleaner will take the ink right off. And that still may take the ink off of some of them. Some of those Decagon reels. It just, you don't know. You just, and I don't know how to, and I've shopped well over 100 games, probably closer to 150, and you don't know from game to game to game which one it's going to take the ink off of and which one it's not. But especially those 10-sided Decagon reels, be really careful with them. But this is what I use on them. Okay, this is the dreaded WD-40. There's a use for them, but you don't spray it inside all the coils and just spray the game with it. But I use it, I clean the stepper units, the outside with that and a piece of 4/0 steel wool. You know, this it works great. And then you wipe it off and you put your super lube on it, and you're good to go. Okay. The dreaded FS for you. The only person I know that can adjust these is Don Owen. Just so you know. But these you gotta clean these. You gotta take them off to do it. You know, but that's, you know, the lubricant, the WD-40 and some 4/0 steel wool. So get the right tools. Learn how to read a schematic. The schematic isn't that hard to read. I learned how to read a schematic back in 1977 when I had a Fiat, fix it again, Tony. And I had the manual for the Fiat, and I had to rewire it. And you go in the back of all the wire colors were in Italian. So I learned how to read a schematic back then. So as soon as I bought one of the pinball machine, it was like the good old days. So learn how to read a schematic. I have a picture here. This is a nondescript schematic, a piece of one. And we just had a problem with a game out on the show floor a little while ago. And by the way, it's broken again. But what we had to do was somehow this didn't shrink. Somehow this didn't. Well, anyway. Yeah. Okay. Just gotta get down a little bit though. The AX reset relay wasn't firing. We followed it all the way back. And the broken wire, there's a broken wire here. So what this is saying is, from the power source, which is let me see if I can pull this up a little bit. From the power source on the bottom here, runs all the way up the side to the first switch, which was open. To this first switch. Runs all the way up. And once that closes, that's supposed to be closed when the game starts. This is what, well, you gotta understand the schematic. When you see a schematic sitting there, ball one, ball in the trough, ready to fire. Okay? In the shooter lane, ready to fire. So that's already open. But when you reset the game, that's supposed to be closed. That closes, and one of the wires is broken.
Hey, that's for Gottlieb's only, right? I think Williams is.
No, Williams, I believe, is the same.
As far as I know.
I think his Williams is the same.
It's a ball in the trough.
Ball in the shooter lane, ready to fire, ball one.
Yeah.
And pull the plug.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, So learn how to read a schematic. And I think at one point there's going to be a seminar about schematic reading. It's
Not this year.
not this year, but
You can start on it and get it ready for next year.
yeah.
All else
That means-
fails,
that
I'll
means
give
you
you
can-
Dave's number.
What's that?
I said all else fails, I'll give you Dave's number,
Yeah, and I can run you through it. George and I have done this a number of times, but
and he is fantastic, I will add.
so quickly here. Slideshow. Hello. Send it again. So this is the order. We've got a couple more minutes. Then I do restorations. Just so we know, I'm using that restoration guide. You see the guide that you got when you came in. So I always set the body up on sore horses and I clean it off. Use super clean or whatever to clean it off, and I clean up the legs. Then you put it on the legs and get it off the sore horses. I haven't had the head on it yet. I don't have the head on it yet. Okay? And pull out the inside of the cabinet, clean the inside of the cabinet, do the cabinet parts and the motherboard and the motor board, and replace the cord. The electric cord's what, 60 years
6
old,
months.
50 years old? And I'm gonna a little tip about electric cords. I always do a three-wire cord when I replace it. I'll buy a 100-foot piece of cord and cut it 12.5-foot sections. And then you can go to Harbor Freight and buy a 3-prong plug for $2.50, and you get 20% off of that when you use the coupon. And you can have a boatload of plugs for the cost of 2 or 3 of them from the Pinball Resource. Sorry, Frank, don't tell Steve I did that. But, you know, it's just, you know, some ways of doing that. Do the headboard, seal the glass. Well, that's a whole nother seminar about glasses and sealing them and why you do it and what happens when you do it. But I use, just for the record, Rust-Oleum Clear. Some people use triple thick, some people use some other thing. Put the head on the game, because now you've got the motor board all in, you can pull the cord out, the head on the game, take the top, the playfield apart, move the flippers, all the stuff, touch the playfield. If you do that, do the bottom of the playfield, reassemble the top, troubleshoot, touch the cabinet. It's kind of the order. I just wanted to go through that real quick, but I wanted to talk about safety really quickly, because safety is the biggest deal here. Electrical safety, proper wiring of a new wall plug and wall cord and plug. Making sure that the black wire goes in the small prong on the right side of the plug, goes to the fuse, right? And the other part goes to the white wire, goes to the bottom of the transformer. And the green wire, the ground, goes to the bottom of the transformer. And we run a wire from the bottom of the transformer around so that we ground the coin door. The idea behind this is that you're grounding something that's got 120 volts in it, and that's the coin door. All right? And perhaps the flipper buttons on some of the earlier, the 60s games with the levers in them. Okay? So knowledge of what the 120 volt system is. The wires that are covered with the fabric wire, they're not 120 volts generally, in most cases. The plastic covered wires are the 100 on an EM, you know. The plastic covered wires are the 120 volt system for the most part. There's some exceptions, like for example the light bulbs that light the coin slots on some of the 70s games. They're plastic covered wires, but they're part of the 6 volt system. So knowledge of short circuits, that's why there's that circuit breaker thing that I said you can make one of those. They're easy to make. If I left my business card over there, somebody wants to email me, I'd be happy to run you through how to get the parts for that and what to do with that. Be careful with worn and frayed and cut wires. They could be all over the place. This mouse could have gotten in there and chewed them and that kind of thing. And you can tell when a mouse has been in your game. You know, it's pretty obvious. So, other things that sharp object, burrs in the bolts that put the legs. I don't know how many times I've cut my hands because of that. But this is one of the most important things I wanted to say today about this stuff is the playfield glass. Tempered glass is really important. Now, how do do you tell whether it's tempered or not? There are several ways. Look at it at a sharp angle and it'll look kind of wavy if it's tempered. Make sure it's nice and clean, and it'll look kind of wavy. If there are chips or nicks missing, it's probably plate glass. I would say, 98 out of 100 times it'll be plate glass if that's the case. Okay, I blew a piece of tempered glass up in my hand. Make sure if you have tempered glass, you don't hit the edges on anything,
Oh, yeah.
because they'll blow up in your hands. You've seen it. You've done it
3 or
yourself.
4 times.
Tempered glass doesn't always have a logo on it. In fact, probably half the time it doesn't. If it's tempered glasses, generally the edges are smooth. That's not always the case. Pinball manufacturers didn't always use tempered glass. I don't know what year they started. Sometime in the 60s, I would think.
Yeah, I think so.
Sometime in the 60s.
After metal rails had already come in.
Yes, because I know my slick chick didn't have it, and I cut my hand on the side of the glass. This is my slick chick, so. But please understand the liability. If I had a game with a piece of plate glass here sitting on the show floor, and a little 6-year-old somehow broke it and cut their wrist or something like that with it, I don't know if I could live with myself. These things, you don't think about, the implications of not following the safety rules are, but you have to think about who's going to be playing your games, who's going to be exposed to them. Do you have it in a little cabana by your pool or something? You know what I mean? Where you're going to come in with a bathing suit on, and you're playing a pinball machine, right, Joe?
Bare feet.
With bare feet, so those are the things that you have to consider. Last thing, I fix a lot of games. I do, and there's stuff that I don't know yet, and I've done it a long time. This is and it's hard to read. This is a mod that was put out by Gottlieb in the 70s, because the ball sometimes when it kicks out doesn't have enough oomph to make it to the shooter lane. And they made a little mod with the metal ring, and they explained it to you. This is right from Gottlieb. Steve Young copied it and gave it to me. He gave me permission to actually use this. So there's things that those of us who are veterans have been doing this for a long time don't even know. We have to figure out. Yeah, sometimes there's parts that you have to make because they're not available. You know what I mean? So. I think that's it. Questions? I know we really went through Repair 101 fast, but I
While
wanted
he's
you to
taking
know.
questions, I'm gonna switch the presentation to mine.
You have a printout of that mod that you just showed?
I have one copy of it. I'll give it to you.
I want to take that stuff.
So what is that?
Can I find that online somewhere?
No, that's a memo that Gottlieb sent out to all the operators. Back in the memo. I got that from Steve Young.
Because that's an issue.
Yeah.
So you switch without an issue, I just.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll help you.
It's not Alan.
Plate glass breaks, and it makes much of a mess though in your game, right?
Yeah, it does. If tempered glass breaks, you get a billion little pieces. Where plate glass, there's those sharp edges and you can cut yourself.
And it goes with scratch, I guess, the plate deal.
Well,
Hey, what are you doing, Animal?
Yeah.
thank you for coming and. You guys behaved, I can't believe it.
I didn't know you were doing this.
Wait till tonight.
You told me. I tried to get one beer down.
I was gonna give out the toothpicks at the door.
So what is that mod? Do you just, is that just moving it around, or do you have to actually?
You take the ring and you bend the edges a little bit so it holds the ball in a different way.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm new to pinball, just on the non-glass plastic stuff. I don't have any real knowledge of it. I know it's really expensive and yeah, that's right here. I don't know that it's worth spending the money on it unless you have a real property. I just don't want a machine. I think I might as well make it nice. Yeah. And it's really nice. But starting a million machine.
Just a second.
Yeah, right. But So I hear it's not a game,
Yeah, like one that you would import from Europe somewhere.
I think I got saving the modifications that do there.
The problem with my PowerPoint was, for example, the last one I gathered, I couldn't change the orientation of that last slide.
I like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be.
I'm going to explain that. There are a lot of games in the hall that are add-a-ball games. And I'm going to put some perspective on
They
that.
asked me how many. Well, I hope I was able to help, and I hope you got something.
You see them, there's a lot of targets around, like this, it's just
Tech tips with us in there.
Mostly solid state.
Mostly solid state.
Yeah. But Tony's going to be there, so she can start. Oh, you want to hear this, don't you?
What's that? Dave, what's next?
This is the talk about add-a-ball games in New England, Italy, and elsewhere.
That's cool.
So,
Good job.
and we'll define the terms here.
I enjoyed that.
Okay, take your seats and,
See, no.
you had
Wait
by
for the
house.
definition.
yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty cool. Back in that game, 9 planets.
Oh, yeah.
She goes by age, yeah.
Exactly.
I wasn't even sure when they took it away. Somebody told me, one day somebody said, hey, it's not a planet. I go, what do you mean? It was always a planet. I went on the internet and I go, yeah, now it's called a dwarf